The Trump administration's relationship with Africa was marked by controversy and tension, particularly following inflammatory remarks that sparked international outrage. In January 2018, President Trump referred to African nations, Haiti, and El Salvador as shithole countries during a meeting with senators, triggering a swift and strong response from African leaders and governments. The African Union, representing 55 member states, condemned Trump's remarks as contradicting accepted diplomatic behavior, especially given the historical context of African slavery in the United States. Individual nations like Ghana, Botswana, and Senegal publicly denounced the president's language, with Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo explicitly stating that his country would not accept such insulting characterizations. This incident was not an isolated event, but part of a pattern of racially insensitive comments. Previous reports had documented Trump making disparaging remarks about immigrants, including claims that Haitian immigrants all have AIDS, and that Nigerian immigrants would never want to go back to their huts. The controversy led to political repercussions, with two top House Democrats announcing a censure resolution against the president. The diplomatic fallout was compounded by Trump's travel ban policies, which disproportionately targeted Muslim-majority and African nations, further straining relationships with these countries and drawing criticism from civil rights organizations and international observers. The Trump administration's approach to Africa was originally characterized by a strategic focus on trade, economic development, and the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. In 2018, President Trump introduced the Prosper Africa initiative, aimed at advancing trade and commercial ties between the United States and African countries. The administration sought to promote open markets for American businesses, support economic growth, and create mutual benefits. However, this approach was not without challenges. For instance, in July 2018, Trump suspended Rwanda's duty-free access to the United States for apparel products due to trade barriers, demonstrating a strict interpretation of AGOA's eligibility criteria. The Prosper Africa initiative aimed to increase U.S.-African trade and investment, with the initiative helping to bring more than 280 deals. These deals were worth $22 billion to financial closure in over 30 countries by November 2020. The strategy also emphasized encouraging African leaders to choose sustainable foreign investments and countering China's economic influence on the continent. Despite these efforts, the administration's trade policies, including potential tariffs and changes to AGOA, raised concerns about the future of U.S.-Africa economic relations and the potential impact on African countries' manufacturing and export sectors. The Trump administration's approach to Africa was multifaceted, involving military support, diplomatic engagement, and strategic interventions. In Nigeria, the administration planned to sell up to a dozen A-29 Super Tucano military aircraft to help fight Boko Haram, a deal originally initiated during the Obama administration. Meanwhile, the administration faced significant human rights challenges, with congressional hearings highlighting the ongoing violence against Christians in Nigeria. Over 52,000 Christians had reportedly been killed since 2009, prompting calls for the U.S. to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern. The U.S. South Africa Command remained committed to countering Russian and Chinese influence in the region, emphasizing the importance of maintaining strategic engagement. This was evident in diplomatic efforts such as mediating conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo and signing new defense cooperation agreements like the one with Algeria in January 2025. These actions demonstrated the Trump administration's complex and strategic approach to African geopolitics, balancing military support, humanitarian concerns, and geopolitical interests. Donald Trump's interactions with African nations have been marked by controversial and often uninformed remarks. During his political career, he has repeatedly demonstrated a lack of understanding about African countries. In one instance, he was widely mocked for mispronouncing Tanzania during a foreign policy speech, with Ted Cruz criticizing his naive and weak foreign policy views. In another notable incident, Trump dismissively claimed during a congressional address that nobody has ever heard of Lesotho, a country that has actually received over $44 million in American financial assistance. This remark deeply disappointed Lesotho's foreign minister. Trump's comments about African nations have often stirred controversy. He mispronounced Boko Haram as Boko Haram and made prejudiced comments about religious conflicts that drew criticism from Muslim advocacy groups. Similarly, he tweeted about South Africa's land reform policies, prompting the government to reject his misinformed perspective. These incidents reveal a pattern of Trump's limited geographical knowledge and culturally insensitive approach to international diplomacy, particularly concerning African nations. The Trump administration's 2.0 approach to Africa is expected to be markedly different from previous administrations. Analysts predict a shift from traditional diplomatic strategies towards a more transactional and pragmatic policy. The focus is likely to move away from promoting democratic principles and towards prioritizing security, stability, and direct economic investments. During his second term, Trump may weaken multilateral institutions like the African Union by favoring bilateral relationships. The administration is anticipated to continue its pivot towards Asia, giving less diplomatic attention to the African continent. Key potential strategies include prioritizing direct investments over traditional development aid, potentially recognizing strategic territory, like Somaliland, to counter Chinese and Russian influence, and maintaining an approach centered on economic and strategic interests rather than humanitarian considerations. The Trump administration has already demonstrated this approach in regions like North Africa, such as its controversial recognition of Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara in exchange for diplomatic normalization with Israel. This transactional diplomacy is expected to continue, reshaping America's engagement with the African continent. The Trump administration's 2.0 approach to Africa is also complex and multifaceted, marked by significant policy shifts. While initially announcing sweeping aid cuts that caused humanitarian distress across the continent, Trump later appointed Masad Boulos, a Lebanese-born business magnate, and his son-in-law's father, as senior advisor for African affairs. Boulos's appointment signaled a potential diplomatic reset, with a focus on trade, security cooperation, and private sector investment. He embarked on a diplomatic tour, visiting the Democratic Republic of Congo to discuss mineral deals and exploring opportunities in countries like Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda. U.S. exports to Africa declined from $38 billion in 2014 to approximately $28 billion in 2023, and foreign direct investment dropped significantly. Aid cuts affected critical health programs, with fears that nearly 6 million Africans could be pushed into extreme poverty. The Trump administration's approach to Africa appears to be marked by significant budget cuts and reduced diplomatic engagement. In fiscal year 2026, the administration plans to halve the State Department's budget, cutting over $30 billion, and considering the closure of at least 27 diplomatic missions, with 10 of those being embassies, many located in Africa and Europe. Simultaneously, U.S. foreign aid contracts have been dramatically reduced, with 90% of contracts terminated. This has led to the immediate shutdown of critical humanitarian programs worldwide, including health clinics in Somalia and HIV treatment programs in South Africa that previously supported 5.5 million people. These cuts have been described by aid workers as pushing humanitarian efforts off a cliff, with termination letters citing the cuts as being for convenience and the interests of the U.S. government. The impact is expected to be devastating for vulnerable populations, with health experts warning of potential lives lost and setbacks in critical health programs. Interestingly, this stands in contrast to First Lady Melania Trump's 2018 African tour, which highlighted U.S.-funded health and education programs, suggesting a potential disconnect within the administration's approach to Africa.